text 3 from chapter 3. Sri Bhagavan Vacha Loke Vedha Nishta Pura Prokta Mayanadha Pura Prokta Mayanaga Yana Yogena Sankhyanam Karma Yogena Yoginam Lokesmin Vidanishta Pura Prokta Mayanaga So Krishna in this verse is replying to the question raised by Arjuna in the previous verse. Arjuna specifically wants to know what is better. Trying to understand the Lord by the process of devotion known as Bhakti Yoga or through the process of philosophical speculation. In the purport, Prabhupada refers to the second chapter where Krishna explains Samkhya Yoga, Karma Yoga, different processes of philosophical understanding, and of course the process of Bhakti Yoga. The Bhagavad Gita analyzes different types of yoga. What is the meaning of yoga? Yoga means to connect, to link up to the Supreme. By and large, people don't really understand what yoga means. About 10 days ago, I was in Almaty, Kazakhstan. And over there I did a talk show on the radio for 1 hour on yoga. We have a 1 hour slot on a big commercial radio every Friday. So the subject matter was yoga, and I was asked to speak on yoga. And it's amazing how so many different people called up with their own definitions of what is the meaning of the word yoga. So yoga actually means to connect, to be connected to whom? To the Lord. And one of Krishna's various names is Yogeshwara, the master of all mystic yoga. So Krishna is explaining that there are no doubt different processes by which you can approach the Lord, but as that is explained in the second chapter also, and Prabhupada refers to this in the purport, the process of Bhakti Yoga is most complete. But the process of Bhakti Yoga, one engages the mind and senses in service to the Lord. Now, practicing Bhakti Yoga doesn't mean a man has to become idle. Now, in this chapter, Krishna is explaining Karma Yoga, and he's explained the same philosophy in greater detail in the 5th chapter, which is also called Karma Yoga. So Karma Yoga essentially means working for the pleasure of the Lord. Offer your abilities and talents in service to the Lord. Krishna makes it clear, just by abstaining from work, you're not going to make spiritual advancement. Rather, one must learn how to act for the pleasure of the Lord. Krishna has established in this chapter that from the very beginning of creation, the Lord sent forth generations of men and told them, "Be thou happy by the performance of sacrifice." Without sacrifice or yajna, a man can never be happy. This is the conclusion of the Bhagavatam. This is the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita. And this is what we can see practically with our naked eyes. You have so many rich people all over the world, people with unlimited material facilities. But are they happy? As Prahlad Maharaja said, Nāta vidum svarta gatim hi Vishnu. The people do not know what is the real path of happiness. So, Bhakti Yoga means recognizing that the goal of life is to make it God-centered and working and dedicating our lives action for the pleasure of the Lord. In the same third chapter, Krishna says, Yagnartha karmano nyatra lokayam karma bandhana. He says, work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, it causes bondage. What is the Bhagavad Gita trying to do? Educate us to the point that we become free from the samsara of entanglement. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recommended everyone should read Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam on a daily basis. Because if you read the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita on a regular basis, we're constantly reminded that we have to work for the pleasure of the Lord and not just our senses. Through the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna teaches us how to work in the spirit of detachment. Working in the spirit of detachment means recognizing that we are not the enjoyers of our results, but rather the Lord is the enjoyer. Just like Krishna told Arjuna, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mama nasmara yudhacha. Arjuna, take part in this battle, but take part in this battle for my pleasure, with the results offered to me. So by hearing the Bhagavatam, reading the Bhagavatam, associating with devotees, one gets inspired to execute the path of Bhakti Yoga, to stay on the path of Bhakti Yoga. Initially, there must be the desire that I want to perfect my life. This is known as the process of Shraddha, having the desire that I must perfect my life. And if the desire is sincere, Krishna brings us in association. Now, this may take on various forms. You may meet a devotee who introduces you to the temple. You may pick up a book describing the process of Bhakti Yoga. As Krishna says, people come to him under 4 different circumstances. What are the 4 types of people who come to Krishna? Chatur Vida Bhajanti Mam. What are the 4 types? One is who's in distress. That's the class. The other is who's inquisitive. Third is a genuine seeker of knowledge. And the 4th is one who wants money. So these days everybody wants money, isn't it? So everyone just come to Krishna. Because Krishna says, doesn't matter what motive you come to me with, eventually you'll get purified. That is the power of Bhakti Yoga. It can purify even the grossest of sinners. So, if you have this genuine desire to approach the Lord, then the Lord puts you in association with some devotees, or puts you in a situation where you get further knowledge about the process of devotional service. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hirdesha rajuna tishtati. I am situated in everyone's heart, and I am the cause of remembrance, and I am the cause of forgetfulness. Krishna causes one to remember the Lord, another individual to forget the Lord. How did that happen? Or why does it happen? Krishna doesn't interfere with our freedom. Just like in the 2nd chapter, 7th verse, Arjuna was confused about his duty, so he approached Krishna and said, now I'm confused about my duty, please guide me. And then Krishna started imparting the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita. And in the 18th chapter, Krishna said, is your illusion now gone? And what did Arjuna say? Yes. And Krishna said, now do as you like. So that is important to remember. That Krishna doesn't interfere with our freedom if we decide to rebel against him. So when you get knowledge about the process of Bhakti Yoga, and when you begin to execute that process of Bhakti Yoga, then that is known as the process of devotional service of Bhajana Kriya. Now, as you engage in the process of devotional service, you gradually get the strength to control the mind and the senses. What does Krishna describe in the 2nd chapter as a man of steady intelligence? We all have to become individuals of steady intelligence. In society today, intelligence is considered if you have some academic degrees. If you have some degrees next to your name, they say, oh, he's very intelligent. But what does Krishna describe as a man of steady intelligence? One who can restrain his senses. One who can fix his consciousness on the Lord. One who can control the senses. Now someone else may say that these 3 things are very difficult to do. Yes, to restrain your senses, trudna. Keeping them under control, trudna. Fixing the consciousness on the Lord, trudna. But Krishna says, if you can do these 3 things, then you become a person of steady intelligence. Now, through the process of Bhajana Kriya devotional service, you can do these 3 things. In the Bhagavad Gita, in so many places, Prabhupada very clearly stated, unless one becomes Krishna conscious, it is impossible to control the mind and the senses. Of course, in mature life, everyone is struggling with the mind and the senses. But by endeavoring on the path of Bhakti Yoga, by engaging the mind and senses positively, you can gradually gain control. What is the most famous example of a devotee who engaged in mind and senses in service of the Lord? It's from Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, everyone knows that. Amrishma. So by executing the process of the devotional service, the obstacles of spiritual life, such as Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Mad, Matsarya, lust and greed, envy, hatred, etc., they all get weakened. Now, on the path of Bhakti Yoga, there has to be some type of tapasya or austerity. In society today, nobody wants to hear the word tapasya. So, on the path of Bhakti Yoga, there has to be some practice of austerity or tapasya. Just like Krishna describes in the 17th chapter, how do you practice austerity of the body, mind, words. Now to practice the austerity without the process of Bhakti Yoga would be impossible. But by executing the process of Bhakti Yoga, one can practice these different types of austerity. For example, with regards to the tongue, Krishna says one should speak words that are truthful. In Kali Yoga, the motto is never speak the truth. But Krishna says one of the austerities of the tongue is to speak words that are truthful. People talk about God, but even then they don't speak words that are truthful. They present their own concocted views of God. So what's the beginning of truthfulness? The beginning of truthfulness is to accept the teachings of the Lord as they are. Then you present the teachings of the Lord as they are. Then you practice truthfulness in your Vaishnava dealings with one another. So that's one of the austerities of the tongue. Then speak words that are pleasing and beneficial. Now you may say that if we have to speak words that are pleasing, then I should just speak what the people want me to speak. Just like the politicians all over the world. What do the politicians do? They find out what people want to hear, and then they speak on that. But our business is to speak words that are beneficial and pleasing. So what's beneficial? Obviously when you talk something that can help you achieve the goal of life. So our philosophy is the truth should be spoken, but it should be spoken in a pleasing manner. We speak the truth, but we present it in a pleasing manner. And do not agitate others. As a preacher gets better, he learns the art of presenting the Krishna conscious philosophy truthfully and without agitating others. So Prabhupada was uncompromising in presenting the philosophy. So people with different philosophies would always come and meet him, argue with him. But he was always very pleasing and gentle in talking to them. And everyone would walk away fully satisfied that they had met a perfect gentleman. So, we speak a truthful philosophy. We don't compromise the philosophy, but we present it in a truthful manner. Another study of the tongue is to regularly recite Vedic literature. The Vedic literature is compiled by the Lord who incarnated as Vyasadeva. So we regularly recite Vedic literature. The tongue likes to vibrate. So we vibrate the tongue in a positive way. Regularly recite Vedic literature. Many devotees have a habit of chanting shlokas or learning the translation of shlokas. So if one is executing the process of Bhakti Yoga, then to practice the austerities of the tongue as we briefly described becomes feasible. Then Krishna also explains what are some of the austerities of the body. For example, one of the austerities of the body is to use the body to serve the Lord. So we just discussed, some devotees just said, the most perfect example of such an individual was King Amrish. We have knowledge-acquiring senses, objects of the senses, working senses. Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, touch are described as the knowledge-acquiring senses. What did Amrish Maharaj do with his eyes? Saw the beautiful form of the Lord. In Moscow, Begawai, you have two sets of deities. So you can see with your eyes, both the small and the big deity. So, with the tongue, with the ears, he heard the vibrations of the Lord. So some of the other, we should learn how to use the body and the senses in service of the Lord. Then with the body, you serve the Brahmanas. When we talk about Brahmana, we talk about Brahmana by qualification and not birth. The Brahman's qualifications are described in the Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna says one of the austerities of the body is to serve the genuine Brahmins. At a certain point in history, there were a class of people who thought that one becomes a Brahmana only on the basis of birth. But Bhakti Siddhantaji and Thakur Bhakti were pioneers in this area in proving that one becomes a Brahmana not on the basis of qualification of birth, but on the basis of qualification. Another austerity of the body is the principle of cleanliness. You've heard this saying, cleanliness is next to godliness. Then simplicity. Our philosophy is simple living life. And then it's non-violent. Now Krishna is explaining in this third chapter on Karma Yoga how the path of Bhakti Yoga is superior to the path of philosophical speculation. And by the process of Bhakti Yoga, you can control the mind and the senses and have the consciousness fixed on the Lord. Now, practically speaking, some of you may say, but we see that we are engaged in the path of Bhakti Yoga and we're still not able to control the mind and the senses. So where is the fault? Is the fault in the medicine? Or is the fault in the doctor that's prescribing the medicine? Or is the fault in the patient that is taking the medicine? So the fault is not in the medicine. The medicine is perfect. The medicine not produced on this early planet is produced in Vaikuntha. As Thakur Bhaktivinoda says in his 𝐃𝐲𝐬𝐭𝐫𝐚𝐜𝐿 prayer, the holy name is descending from the spiritual world. Now beg for the holy name to be free of the illusion of Maya. So have no doubt that the process is perfect. Is the fault in the doctor? No. Krishna is the original doctor. The Vedic scriptures contain instructions compiled by the Lord himself. And the true representative has a very easy job. He just has to repeat what he has heard from his guru. Is that difficult? It's very easy. You just repeat. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ordered every individual, what? By my order, you become a guru. Didn't he say that? So Lord Chaitanya wanted thousands of preachers, not just one or two, but thousands and thousands of gurus. He wanted all of you to be gurus, preachers, to preach what you have heard. And if we just preach what we've heard, then it will automatically have potency. Just like sometimes each of you may have seen, you have a new bhakta or a new congregation devotee who doesn't even understand the philosophy fully, but he repeats exactly what he heard from his temple associate. And just by his repeating what he's heard, he inspires somebody else to take to the process of Krishna consciousness. So this is because if you repeat the instruction intact, the potency is there in the message. So the fault is not in the medicine, the fault is not in the doctor, the fault is in the patient who doesn't take the medicine according to the prescription. Now, Prabhupada is making the point in the purport, how through the process of Bhakti Yoga, one can gain control over the mind and the senses. Now, as we execute the process of Bhakti Yoga, the anarthas begin to get weakened and we get more and more strength to practice austerity. In the Bhagavad Gita, the emphasis is on sacrifice, some type of yajna or sacrifice for the Lord. Just like no one can live without food grain. Can anyone live without food grains? You can live without benzene, you can live without a car, but you can't live without food grains. Anna bhavanti bhutani prajana anna sambhava. Food grains come from rainfall, and rainfall comes from performing religious duties. Just like these as we see all over the world, the natural resources are running out. Just like you may have seen now, the benzene price in your country that produces so much benzene has gone up. Rest of the world, the benzene prices have doubled in 1 year. In your country, it's almost free. Compared to other countries, it's almost free. So, why is all this happening? Because the natural resources of the world are all running out. And why are they running out? Why is material nature not cooperating? Because yajnas have disappeared from the scene. People don't want to perform yajna. They want God's kingdom, but they don't want God. They want Ram Rajya, but they don't want Lord Ram. Like why do people talk of Ram Rajya even today? During the period of Ram Rajya, there was no misery in life, no mental disease, no old age, no disease. Isn't that great? Then I imagine there was no doctors and hospitals then for sure, no aptekas. And death was there, but you could choose your own moment of death. So, those who know about the glorious days of Lord Ramachandra talk, yes, we want Ram Rajya. But an important element in society was that everything was focused fully on Lord Ram, on the Lord. But that they don't want. Just like when you talk about Vaikuntha, many people say, oh yes, I'd love to go to Vaikuntha. But then when you talk about the rules and regulations you have to follow, then say, oh, I'm not ready. So, executing yajna pleases the Lord, and in return, material nature cooperates. Krishna says in the Gita, by performing austerities, there will be cooperation between the demigods and humanity, and there will be natural prosperity. So yajnas are an important element in human society. Now, as we execute this process of yajna, we naturally are able to cleanse the heart, weaken the anarthas, and get more determined in our faith to execute devotional service. In the Bhagavatam, you read a story of two kings. One was called Vena, the other one was called King Prithu. Vena was godless. As a result, the citizens were very unhappy. Material nature went on strike. How does material nature go on strike? How do the workers go on strike? They don't go and work. They lock up the plants. So how does material nature go on strike? No rainfall. Do what you want. About 25 years ago, there was an American company that was boasting that we'll be able to produce artificial rainfall. But they totally failed. So when material nature goes on strike, there's no rainfall. There are floods, earthquakes, drought. The trees don't release fruit, the oceans don't release minerals, etc. And then there's a shortage. And King Prithu, when he became the king, he ordered all the citizens to glorify the Lord. And as a result, material nature fully cooperated. So Krishna is emphasizing very clearly to Arjuna. Arjuna was presenting so many arguments in the second chapter as to why he should refrain from this battle. Why was Arjuna refusing to fight? He was a Vaishnava with a soft heart. Vaishnava is very forgiving. Vaishnava is not revengeful. Even though the Pandavas were entitled to their kingdom, but in order to avoid a bloodbath, they were ready to settle for 5 villages. They were ready to settle for 5 villages. Can you imagine? They were entitled to the whole kingdom. But they said, okay, give us 5 villages. Why did they ask for 5 and not 6 or 7? Plus, when Arjuna saw all the respectful individuals on the other side, he said, how can I fight? How can I fight against these respectable people? What will I get? Even if I win the battle, all these people would have died. What will I gain? So Krishna induced him to fight, but fight for his pleasure. So we should clearly understand the Bhagavad Gita. Sometimes people get scared of Krishna consciousness, thinking that if they become Krishna conscious, they may not do the mature duties. Everyone is forced to act. We all have to do some action, some activity. As Prabhupada explains, Krishna consciousness is essentially a change of consciousness, not really a change of activity. You don't give up your activity, you change your consciousness. Therefore, Krishna consciousness is a very practical philosophy that can be practiced by any individual in any condition. So as we keep executing the process of devotional service, we will get determined and we gradually get attached to the process. But we must understand that there's no shortcut. In material life, we all like taking shortcuts. And we all like bargaining. Is bargaining very common in your Renox? Like when you go to India to shop, I'm sure all the devotees have learned you must bargain. Somebody says 5 rubles, we say 2.5 rubles. Now Rupa Goswami gives us some advice on this. He says, my dear friend, please do not bargain. Pay the full price and become Krishna conscious. So Rupa Goswami says, do not bargain. What does he mean? And Rupa Goswami said, don't bargain, pay the full price. What does he really mean? One answer was fully surrender. My question is that Rupa Goswami says, do not bargain, pay the price. What does he mean? When Rupa Goswami says, pay the full price, do not bargain, what he means is, follow the process that's given to you. Don't bargain on the process. Just like the great acharyas have told us, you must chant 16 rounds a day. On the Ekadasis, do more. So do that. Don't say, okay, I'll do 4 rounds, sometimes I'll do 16. Then, the great Rupa Goswami talks in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu about the process of sadhana bhakti. Why is this discussion of sadhana bhakti there? For our benefit. If you follow the process of sadhana bhakti, it helps you to purify the mind and the senses. So follow the process. Then Prabhupada has given us rules like morning, evening class and so on. Try and follow the process. So if you follow the process, though it may appear a little difficult initially, in the end it's going to become sweet. We shouldn't forget Krishna's definition in the 18th chapter, where Krishna describes happiness in the mode of goodness is that which in the beginning may be bitter, but in the end becomes sweet, and which wakes you up to self-realization. So if you pay the price, then the result is guaranteed. So the process of Bhakti Yoga is superior to the other forms of yoga, and Krishna confirms this again in the 18th chapter, where he says, Bhakti mam abhijananti yavani chasmi tatvatah. I can only be known by the process of Bhakti Yoga. In India, you can practically see, sometimes you meet individuals who have studied Sanskrit, who have graduated in Sanskrit, they may have memorized all the verses, etc. But they are not practicing Bhakti Yoga. So they can't control their mind and senses. They may be Sanskrit scholars, but they smoke, drink, do all nonsense. On the other hand, you may have an ISKCON devotee who may not have memorized all these verses, who may not be expert in this area, but is very simply practicing the process of Bhakti Yoga. Whereas he may not have memorized the verses, because he's practicing Bhakti Yoga, can control his mind and senses. Now one other point that we want to cover and then end the talk is probably the purport says, religion without philosophy is sentiment, while philosophy without religion is mental speculation. So religion must have philosophy. You can't just be sentimentally religious. People today are sentimentally religious, therefore they argue, my faith is better than your faith. But religion must have philosophy. Why do we do what we do? For example, we in Krishna consciousness can philosophically explain almost everything that we do and why we do. Prabhupada wanted us to understand the philosophy of Krishna consciousness before we got initiated. Therefore, in our Krishna conscious movement, we let the people come, study the books, associate, and then later on get initiated. So religious principles must have philosophy. Philosophy that is free from the 4 defects. Philosophy that is coming directly from the Lord. Just like the Bhagavad Gita which we are discussing today was spoken millions of years ago. In the present form, Krishna spoke 5,000 years ago. We read it again and again. I'm sure you've heard a lecture on the 3rd chapter many times before. But you don't get time. This is philosophy coming from the Supreme Lord. So religion without philosophy is sentimental. So when people come and say, why are you practicing Krishna consciousness? This is not the faith, the religion of your birth. You should explain to them what is the real philosophy behind religion. The real meaning of what religion is to develop love of God. And you give up your love or give up your attachment to so-called sinful act. So whichever process can help you to come to the point, it can be accepted. When you are in pain, your anxiety is to get the pain relieved. You don't care. When you have fire in the house, you just want the fire to be put off. You don't care where the firemen are from. So similarly, religion must have philosophical content. We in the Krishna conscious movement are so fortunate that we have a vast Vedic literature that presents nothing but philosophy. And we must understand the philosophy, because as we understand the philosophy, we'll be able to convince ourselves and convince others. And how do we understand the philosophy? By Shravanam. The more you hear, the more attentively you hear, the better you understand. And of course reading. So we should all become good philosophers. Not speculative philosophers, but real philosophers. And real philosophers one who knows that everything's coming from God, used in service of the Lord. The mind and the senses have to be controlled, not that they control you, and the process of engaging them positively. And all this becomes possible when you vibrate the glories of the Lord. So that is real philosophy of life. And in the association of devotees, you get the strength to practice this process. To summarize the 3rd verse of the 3rd chapter that we've been discussing today, Krishna is replying to Arjuna's question. Arjuna wanted a more clear-cut direction. What should I do? Should I engage in Freud work, philosophical speculation, or Bhakti Yoga? And Krishna answering that the process of Bhakti Yoga is superior. If Arjuna can have doubts, where are we? So just like Arjuna got his doubts removed by going to a perfect authority, we should also get our doubts removed by going to the proper representative of the Lord. Don't feel bad if you have doubts. Feel bad if you don't get the doubts removed. Rupa Goswami knew you would have doubts. So what did he give us the solution? Dadati pradigrahanati. In a place where Rupa Goswami says, reveal your mind to those who are more advanced. So present your doubts to those who are more advanced. Take instruction from them. So if you take the proper process, then the doubts can be removed. So please take advantage of the process and perfect your life. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,